SoundCartel.
How do you avoid selling your soul for a sale at a time when leads are fewer and competition is still a constant? While your first instinct might be to panic, don't. There's some really practical steps to set you up for sales success when you just might need it the most. From SoundCartel, I'm Nicole Goodman, and this is Business Essentials Daily. COVID-19 has shaken the way we've done business like nothing before. But as hard as it might seem, you've got to ditch the negativity. The opportunities out there are precious, and you can't waste any of them. Sales expert Tony Gattari, Managing Director of the Achievers Group, offers his top-selling tips in the current environment, including the importance of keeping your passion and positivity. First, Chris Ashmore asks Tony what he thinks the role of sales is right now and how it's changing.
Well, Chris, it's getting tougher. Let's be brutally pragmatic and practical here. You've got less leads and you actually have to convert those leads in a much more competitive environment. Of course, it's going to be tougher. And a lot of organisations that I've spoken to are struggling enormously at the moment trying to get sales. And I believe the reason that they're actually trying to get sales is because in the past, it was a walk in the park. They were just taking an order. Now they really have to work it. The role of selling is actually going to become more important moving forward because I think you just can't rely on an abundance of leads anymore. I think your leads are actually going to be less. I think the cost of acquisition is actually going to be higher. And I think you're going to have much more competition because the market might shrink, but the competitors are out there. I think there is going to be a huge emphasis on price discounting. I think some people will just sell their soul to actually get a sale. And I really think that organizations are going to struggle to maintain margin in a period of time where it could diminish. And a lot of salespeople who aren't very good at what they're actually doing might fall into this terrible trap of discounting prices just to actually get a sale. And that actually has a spiraling effect on the profitability of that business in a dramatic way. And I think that's actually what's really, really changing. And I think salespeople are just going to have to get really good at what they're actually doing. I mean, really good at converting, really good at improving the average dollar sale. Clients aren't stupid, and they know the marketplace is really tough, and they know that they're in the best buying advantage as opposed to the seller has got the advantage. So they are going to use that to their advantage, and you're going to have real brains and smarts to overcome this.
So for business owners in their sales team, what should they be doing then?
I think they've got to actually go back to basics. And I think you've got to maintain a positive spirit. Chris, it is so easy now to get negative. It is so easy just to turn on the news and it's all doom and gloom and it's like, oh, woe to me, woe to me. If you're in sales, you can't afford that spirit to affect you. Because what you confess, you'll possess. If you say you're going to have a rotten sales year, you will have a rotten sales year. I'll guarantee it. So the first thing you've got to do is that you've actually got to maintain a certain sense of positiveness. Number two, I think you've got to actually become client and outcome focused. I think you've actually got to care. I think you've got to realize that my job is to help you to solve your problem. My job is not to flog your product. My job is to listen intently and to tailor a product around or service what you require. And if I don't have that, have the dignity of actually saying, I don't think I can help you. Number three, I think you've got to have an amazing knowledge base. And I think this is so important now in the sales professional because I think what's happening, Chris, is that a lot of people have got a lot of time on their hands and they're doing a lot of research, okay, and they're at home and they might be at home and they're buying and they're going onto Google and they're going onto all these other mechanisms and they know a lot about the products. And I think that you can't fake it until you make it. I think you've actually got to realize that, okay, my clients aren't stupid anymore. They're really educated. They know a lot about the product, and I can't actually deceive them. So I have to actually become more knowledgeable moving forwards. Number 4, I think you've got to have effective systems. Now, what I mean by that is because you're getting less leads, every lead that you get is like gold. I mean, it's like, oh, wow, we got a lead. And I think if you don't have a brutally good, efficient CRM, okay, in the past you probably didn't have to because you could waste a few, you could burn a few. Okay, I don't think you can burn anymore. I think every single lead has to be treated like gold, and you must have a fantastic system that moves people through gates, that gives you visibility, and there is actually no leakage. Number 5, I think you've effectively got to follow through. I think you've got to be incredibly resilient. I think you've got to continue to connect with people. I don't think it's a one transactional sale anymore. I think it's very much you've got to use the principle of 9 touches. I think you've got to actually re-communicate with your prospects all the time and never actually quit. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, they might be taking longer. There's a lot of fear. There's a lot of procrastination. There's a lot of, oh, what happens if this happens? And what happens if we go into lockdown again? I don't know what's going to happen in the future. I don't know if I have a job next year. Yada, yada, yada. There is so much fear going on, and fear actually leads to procrastination. So I think you've got to continue to realise I've got to continue to communicate with this prospect because they're not as confident as they used to be, and we need to embrace that. Number 6, I think you've got to be a good influencer and communicator. If I can ask the listeners to do one thing, if you can't meet people face to face because of circumstances like COVID or whatever, because it's not possible to do that anymore, okay, first of all, ensure that you can't do that, because my preferred option is always to meet people face to face. I love meeting people face to face because I read people. I sit down with them and I'm checking out their body language. I'm looking for cues. I'm actually looking for, openings. And I can assess a person by looking at them because I will check them out. Now, if you can't do that, then I would strongly suggest a reasonably good alternative is something like Zoom, something where you can actually see your prospects, even over a screen. That is much better than trying to do a sale via email. Trust me on this. Emails are very impersonal. They don't give you a full gauge of what's going on in the customer's head. You can't read them. You can't see their body language. You can't see their eye squinting. You can't see what they're actually doing behind the scenes. So I think you've got to be a great influencer communicator. What else do I think you've got to do? I think you've got to be passionate. I think you've got to be persistent, and I think you've got to have high energy. I think it's going to be tough. I don't think it's a sprint anymore, Chris. I think it's a marathon. Okay? And I think you've got to have that marathon spirit of endurance. And I think you've got to look after yourself. I think you've got to have rest for recovery. And I think you've got to eat well. I think you've got to exercise. But I think you've got to have that passion and persistence and a very high energy level. I believe that in the COVID situation, you've got to truly believe in your product, your service, and yourself. Because in all my experience, belief aid transfer is one of the most important criteria. Because if I believe in the product, then you'll believe in the product. And especially now, but if you are in doubt about your product, your service, or yourself, sometimes the prospect can sense that. And that doubt leads them to actually say, I'm not so sure. So in summary, Chris, it's tougher, okay? And there's an old proverb, don't wish it was easier, wish to be better. Maybe there is an enormous opportunity for salespeople to equip themselves to be the best that they've ever been, because I assure you that once the season is over, they will be in a much better position overall from an employment perspective.
That was Achievers Group Managing Director, Tony Gattari. This episode of Business Essentials Daily is produced by the team at SoundCartel. Thanks for listening. I'm Nicole Goodman. We'll bring you more Be Daily tomorrow. Follow at BE Daily Podcast across social media and head to bedaily.com.au for more from the Business Essentials Daily podcast.
SoundCartel.